Hello, everyone. We are the Hope Village Revitalization team. Our project was focused on solar deployment and weatherization in the Hope Village community in Detroit, Michigan. Brief introduction to our team. I'm Amanda Cassetti. I am a medical student. We are also here with Kayla Ellis, architecture student, Kale Colony, robotics, manufacturing, and sustainable systems, Craig Riley, Herb Institute for Global Sustainable Enterprise, and Saima Rashid, public policy and environment and sustainability. So as a team, we have worked with Hope Village throughout the last year. Hope Village is a community-led and community-driven organization that is committed to improving the quality of life in the Hope Village neighborhood. They have the key decision makers of the community residents, the organizations that work in that community, and then various community stakeholders who have all come together and formed this nonprofit that is working to revitalize Hope Village. The work revolves largely around fresh and local food systems, sustainable, affordable housing, and overall healthy neighborhoods. They have a lot of different initiatives, and one of them is this solar deployment and weatherization. So our overall problem statement is that energy bills in Detroit are very, very high. And in a community survey amongst residents of Hope Village, they were really concerned about their expensive energy bills and how it was unsustainable for them. In an analysis of the community, they found that a lot of the houses are not optimized for energy efficiency. And so that is really the core of this project. And when we were in conversation with our community partner, we also discussed a lot of the federal funding cuts that we were experiencing around the beginning of this year, and also how the funding for their nonprofit is always quite tenuous. So then we added an arm of this project to address funding cuts and sustainable options for funding for solar and weatherization. I'll pass it off.
So our key deliverables that we did, we have a proof of concept on an energy management collection tool, which Kay will highlight in a little bit greater detail. We have a home evaluation guide. So before you go through either these upgrades or these retrofits, you need to make sure that the housing stock is actually available or at the state that you can do these upgrades. We focused on weatherization, heat pump, and solar deployment plan. The idea for Hope Village is they currently only have one proof of concept completed, so their house, you can think of it as their office space. They want to scale up from 1 to 10 homes and then 10 to eventually 100 homes. There's a business case and cost savings analysis, so what can we go when we're looking for additional funding mechanisms, which we'll touch on later in the presentation. What does that look like and how can we pitch it to them? We have identified third-party funders within the Detroit community that align with our value system and focus on donating these initiatives. And then we developed a community solar case for more of a long-term vision of what the community can look like.
Hi, so the proof of concept, what we did was we worked with DT's energy collection mechanisms. You can see that in the upper right. That's a energy bridge, and then down below, to keep capital costs low, our data collection node is based off commercial off-the-shelf embedded systems. This unit will communicate wirelessly with the meter that's on the outside of the house and with the inverters that are on the house that collect firm recordings of how much data or how much energy a given house is using. That also includes natural gas. This is an example of the data flow. So it pulls the information from the meter and puts it up into a cloud service for our end client. And then this is an example graph that shows on a minute by minute, second by second basis how much energy is being used. This information proves critical because it allows the fundraisers to be able to prove, hey, if we do X to a house, we save this amount of electricity, and it really builds the case moving forward, especially in limited funding environments.
All right, so one of our key deliverables, like I mentioned before, is the long-term vision on what community solar can look like. So for those who may not be aware, community solar can be thought of as a shared renewable energy model where multiple participants, in this case it's renters and particularly low-income households can subscribe to an offsite solar array, and then in return, they're able to receive some kind of credit that lowers their monthly rates. So in this case study, we pulled from nationwide different metros that are very similar to the Detroit community, and even some of them being in Ann Arbor, to outline what the potential application would look like and what the viability would look like in the long term. We highlighted a lot of the costs, the economic and social benefits, and then more importantly, provided a step-by-step guide on how, based on best practice, we can implement this in the future. One of the interesting examples, and I'll just cut to the picture right now, in Veterans Park in Ann Arbor, they had a parking lot, right? And what are we gonna be able to use it for? So they repurposed the area while still keeping it a parking lot for Carpart Solar. So here they're able to, at a very low cost, be able to provide energy credit to the people in the community. Now in the Hope Village aspect, which you can see from the aerial on the left side, the map that we have identified is you can put up to 150 potential solar panels, generating approximately 82,000 kilowatt hours a year in energy, which is huge. And so in the short term, this is a viable solution that the community can tap into, and we think it's something that should be greatly considered.
And then in terms of the guide for the client, instead of just sealing cracks in windows or doors, we were thinking of how you could take specific typologies in the area within a 0.5-mile radius specifically from Hope Village and where they're hoping to implement this at, and see how you could actually practically place solar and potentially install heat pumps into these homes. So there were two typical and two atypical case study scenarios, one of them being an apartment complex on the far right that they're hoping to initiate this next phase into. So I took down the square footages of the home, saw what was able for the solar panels to be implemented, and then calculated what type of system or how many kilowatt hours they would need to actually benefit from this installation. And then from there, we took the NREL PV watts calculator and the U-Builder system to actually implement these panels. We took two panel companies and compared them with one another to see which one was most efficient in this case scenario, to see how many kilowatt hours each case study would actually generate. And then additionally, you could see it's even broken down into like how much the actual panels would cost and the inverters that would be needed for the homes itself to give you an estimate on the payback period of this installation.
All right. And then briefly, we'll touch on this. So pulling from, basically, you can think of two different cases. One, we use public data from EIA and NREL to understand, okay, for Michigan, for this latitude, for this aging housing stock, what's the potential cost savings, either for, and this is a combination of solar, heat, and or heat pump and weatherization. And from the top, we can say a less conservative estimate is $378 to $555 of annual savings per home. And then when we're leveraging some of the initial base models that was provided by Hope Village, which I would deem the more conservative model, you can see $200 to approximately $30 in savings each year, which may not seem like a lot, but when you're in an energy burden community that spends on average 10%, if not more, on their electricity and other utility, this can be quite significant as well. Now, in light of our current administration and our big, beautiful blunder bill, as I like to call it, it's changed the landscape on a lot of the funding mechanisms that existed for communities like this that desperately need it. And so with that in mind, we unfortunately lost a lot of the funding to get to the second phase. So the team put together this donor list and this network map so you can target different foundations and NGOs that exist in the community that align more importantly with our mission, with the vision of Hope Village, but I have proven execution on these types of projects in the area. And the idea here is to diversify portfolio investment so that way, if we do have another hiccup, unforeseen, it's more isolated and it's not something that's going to be catastrophic to the mission of Hope Village. And so to kind of put a bow on this, we have a proof of concept that Kale highlighted. We touched on the funding network database, the community solar case study, the evaluation guide, and then the business case and the cost savings analysis. And it would be inappropriate not to thank the wonderful people that has allowed us to make this happen. So first and foremost, Debbie, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity and being a return client for the Graham Institute. We've really enjoyed working with you and your guidance throughout the process. Thank you to the Dow Corporation for funding this year over year. As we can see, it's $20 million thus far, and that's extremely significant. And then, of course, our lovely staff at the Graham Institute and your guidance and everything that you've done along the way. Thank you so much.